I wanted to say a few words about using add-ons and downloaded models and stuff like that for Blender challenges and maybe a little bit in my work. In the past, although I used image maps quite a bit before Substance Painter for texturing, I really shied away from using any models that I didn't create myself, and that was just a personal thing. And then, of course, that carried over into the Blender challenges because we want to see people's original work. Of course, many people are, myself included, using image maps which were created by somebody else. They weren't created by me or by you necessarily, unless you took photographs or something like that. And so we were already doing that. And when it came to, say, decals that you wanted to put on your sci-fi object or your electrical panel, we would try to make them ourselves in Photoshop or GIMP or whatever. Pictures and stuff on the wall, sometimes we'd have to find an image, that so that we didn't necessarily take it and use that. And I really struggled for a long time with using something that I didn't make except where I absolutely had to. And I'm now feeling that, of course, plug-in type add-ons, I don't know if you'd call them a plug-in, like say something like Box Cutter or Hard Ops or Decal Machine, any of those are totally fine. Now, I have a bunch of that stuff, but I try not to use it very much because I want to just do the straightforward modeling for people who are just downloading Blender and getting into it or have used it for a while. Of course, we're going to get amazing results if you start using all these fancy plugins. I'm going to call them plugins. But then you start getting into, I find, another level of Blender and of modeling that I'm not really there, and I don't really want to compete in that sphere. I want to do what I can with just plain Blender. But of course, I'm using Substance Painter, so that's not just Blender, and that's just not Windows Paint by any means. Substance Designer, these are all tools that game industry people are going to be using, particular Designer and Painter, Photoshop as well, of course. But if you're doing vegetation, I steered away from that for a long time and focused on just the hard surface models. But if you're doing vegetation, as you can see all around me, you're going to need to do something unless you model every plant yourself. And I did some of that when I did like the medieval scene. I did my own, and they weren't very good plants, but they were my own, and I'd scatter them. I think I probably used the Blender scatter add-on that comes with Blender. But I don't have any problem with using the other software. Now, of course, if you're making a game and you're going to just do a forest thing and there's no real models that you make, then by all means go ahead and do it. It's not my goal. But if I was doing like I did the diner, I'm going to use vegetation software, vegetation models, and something to scatter them with. And I'm okay with that. And I think it improves the quality of the final render, unless you just want to make your abandoned diner or your spaceship or boat or whatever it is and just put it on a pedestal or just put it on a plane. That's fine. But so I am open to using software where it's needed with downloaded models of things like plants and rocks to create the environment and the landscape of your scene to benefit the models that you are making. I don't at this point agree with using some of the software that can scatter like barrels, trash, all that, where those objects are from or assets that are downloaded. If you're going to scatter stuff like a barrel, then model your own barrels, your own papers. All right. I don't really want to, at least for me and for my challenges, have assets other than vegetation and rocks at this point until I change my mind. those kind of things scattered and used from from the internet. If you need a wood palette, then you model that yourself. You don't just download it and put that into your scene because it improves your scene. Of course it's going to. Now, some people are, of course, using human models in there for sense of scale. Sometimes they'll leave it in, like they do a restaurant or a diner or something, and they've got a person in there. I'm not against that. I don't feel that it really fits. Often the character that you're going to get is very high quality compared to the modeling that many of us, I'll put myself in that category, could do. And so I find there's a disjoint. You might say the same with the trees, the really high quality textures and beautifully modeled, and then you got Kimmel's Diner or something in there. But, one step at a time. So, yeah, I think the door is open for landscape software, vegetation software, some rocks. Of course, Blender has a rock generator. You're not necessarily modeling it yourself. You change some parameters. If you can change parameters in the things that you use, great. Makes it a little bit more personalized. Of course, we're all using smart materials from Substance Painter anyhow and just modifying them. So, we're not creating the wheel again completely. We're just using stuff to, accentuate and improve and beautify the models that we're already making, because that's the part we want the skill. Back in the old days, we would just take 3D objects that we'd find on the internet, put them together and say, wow, look at the 3D scene I made. And, what part did we actually do? So, yeah, there's a lot of great stuff out there. And so, I'd like to use more of that as well. So if you are doing a Blender challenge and, you need some trees or grass in there to spruce up your image, then by all means. And you want to use box cutter or any of those things, by all means, go ahead and do it. And decals, you need some flammable decals on your fire extinguisher. Of course, you don't have to make them. It's cool if you do, but, you don't have to. All right, anyways, more on this kind of stuff later. Let me know if you have any comments or feelings about that. Love to hear what you have to say. Take care.